Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Good morning. We've got a great pre-show here. We'll slip right into a question period before it starts. We time that correctly all the time. Anyhow, let's just kick this off. Let's get this going. We have a great show. Thank you all for tuning in. Let's check it out. Let's go.
Hi everyone, good morning. What a great day for Canada.
What? It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Elbows out.
Elbows up.
Had no interest in playing the puck, and he leaned into...
Look, I don't think one needs to respond to every comment. Look, Stephanie, I comply with the rules.
Conflicts of interest
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will.
WTF. Here, here.
The one we call Canadians.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Trudeau referred to me as a twofer.
And now, Pierre Poilievre's new candidate in Durham is a twofer.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, question period Canada, how you doing? So Jamil Giovanni from the introduction, you guys recognize him, right? Like, he does seem to be a secret weapon that Poilievre has in his toolbox to counter the Trudeau playbook, the Liberal playbook. Let's take a closer look at Jamil Giovanni. Seems like the real deal. He's kind of fun to watch. Get you excited about, like, politics. And that's hard. I know. Let's take a look at Jamil Giovanni. Check him out.
I rise in the House today in opposition to this Liberal budget, and also confounded by the fact that it's been titled Building a Strong Economy That Works for Everyone, when the economy is neither strong nor is it working for everyone. I think that should be quite obvious to anyone paying attention. In the spirit of my former colleague at the National Post, Rex Murphy, I'd like to take some time today to speak to the concerns of everyday hardworking Canadians and try to help make sense of how you can have a government calling a budget at this time and in this economy strong and working for everyone. The reality is I've been in Ottawa now for just over a month. I was sworn in to the House in April. And I think one of my key observations is that we have a Liberal government that is living in an alternate reality from the one I lived in before I was in politics and the one I cling desperately to every time I'm in here, because it seems as though in this economy we have Liberal elites experiencing one thing and we have everybody else experiencing something else. Just some things that I'd like to share with the Canadian people that I've observed since being sworn in April. For the last 2 weeks, I have heard the Liberal MP for Whitby defending high grocery bills and making excuses for the fact that it is very expensive for families to purchase the food they need, never mind the healthy food that they need. Earlier today, he was going on and on and on again. Last week he said, and I would like to quote him, "Mr. Speaker, I know that the member opposite feels that grocery prices are too high, and they have been certainly. However, the CPI index has shown that food prices are stabilizing in our economy, which is good news for Canadians."
Well, we begin this hour with breaking news on the cost of living crisis. A new report just into our newsroom is revealing how much more Canadians are paying for food. Well, if this feels familiar to you, you're not alone. Walk in the aisles of your local grocery store, carefully picking produce and trying to stick to a budget. But you can't escape the high price pinch. You might be feeling like you're shelling out hundreds of dollars more for food than last year. And it turns out you're right. This is some serious sticker shock right here. Canada's Food Price Report 2025 estimates the average family of four will spend more than $800 more on food this year in comparison to what they spent in 2024. And the receipts don't end there. Mark Carcasole is on the story for us, and I know you've been digging into some of the big findings here. What can you tell us about what we're going to be paying at the grocery checkout?
We've already been worried for years, Linda, about food insecurity across this country, across the world, really, and this report only shows that there is more reason to worry, increasing reason to worry. Of course, it's all subjective to how much you make, what your various family debts are, but the fact remains that food prices are going up and up and up. As we look at some of the specific numbers, overall food prices by the end of this year are expected to have risen by 3 to 5% over last year. The average family of four is expected to spend $16,833.67 on food by the end of 2025. That is up, as Linda just mentioned, just over $800 from 2024.
For Calgary Crowfoot.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think everyone here is old enough to remember the year 2015. That was the year that the Harper government brought the budget back into balance after successfully steering Canada through the Great Recession, and when the New York Times congratulated Canada for having the world's most prosperous middle class. This was a few years after the Liberals tried to topple the government because Harper's government refused to run larger deficits than were necessary to steer Canada through the 08-09 financial crash. They had run a disciplined government, one focused on core government services and responsibilities. That same year, the Liberals alone campaigned on a promise to run what they called modest deficits for 3 years that would fund unprecedented generational investments that would boost productivity and allow the budget to balance itself. That was the year that the Liberals destroyed the consensus that successive Liberal and Conservatives shared, that deficits matter, that debt matters, that fiscal discipline matters, that productivity matters, and that all of these things directly impact everyday Canadians and their struggles to make ends meet. So here we are, 10 years later, no historic transformational public investments occurred. During that time, the budget was never balanced, and the national debt doubled. The amount spent on Liberal consultants ballooned out of control despite the federal public service increasing by 100,000 employees, while service levels for Canadians declined. The armed forces still have rusting ships, 40-year-old fighter jets, only a few dozen operational tanks, crumbling barracks and housing. The CRA still can't answer the phone or give accurate information to Canadians. And now 10 years after the Liberals promised transformational, generational public expenditure to boost productivity and delivering the lowest per capita growth in the G7 and the OECD, they've tabled a budget promising the same broken promises recycled from 2015. Mr. Speaker, let there be no misunderstanding. This is a credit card budget. They've tabled a budget, the first in nearly 2 years, that sets a new non-pandemic record of $78 billion in deficit expenditure. That's double the size of the deficit that triggered the resignation of the member from University Rosedale when she was the finance minister. Remember that, Mr. Speaker? Remember the chaos this time last year and the consternation and hand-wringing over Trudeau's $42 billion deficit. Remember the 2025 election, Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister promised Canadians that he was the guy who was going to rein in public spending. This deficit in this budget is the equivalent of adding $5,300 of new debt to every Canadian in every Canadian family. And I will point out, I do intend to split my time with the member for Hamilton East Stony Creek. So what do Canadians get for this staggering new debt that every Canadian knows they have to pay off with interest? Is there any new money in this budget to pay for this so-called generational investments that this government keeps talking about? And the answer is no. This act that we're debating does not contain money for transformational new productivity improving spending. It simply grows the size of government. They keep saying that they are going to reduce spending on the operations of government in order to spend more on capital projects. This budget says these words, but this act does not do these things. The main way with which this government plans to fulfill its unbelievable claims about its investments is through accounting trickery, Mr. Speaker. Some might say, well, what's wrong with that if it helps Canadians differentiate between the administration of government and capital cost? Well, what's wrong, Mr. Speaker, is that their definition is grossly misleading. It is overly expansive, says the PBO. What's wrong with it is that they are deliberately trying to trick Canadians into thinking that this government is building infrastructure when they're actually hiring bureaucrats or connected insiders with consulting contracts or dispensing corporate welfare and calling it capital investment. What's wrong is that they are not following internationally recognized definitions. What's wrong is that this government that has done so much over the last 10 years to compromise its fiscal credibility is now resorting to accounting trickery to try and fool Canadians and the finance community. 10 years ago, Mr. Speaker, the budget was balanced. Homes were relatively affordable in Canada, outside of Vancouver at least. Canada's middle class was doing all right, much better than in its peer countries. And over the last 10 years, though, Canada alone, among G7 countries, and alone among members of the OECD, with the exception of Luxembourg, has had no increase in per capita GDP. None. That means that in Canada, we have been left behind by our peer countries. The value of everything produced in Canada, divided by all of the people in Canada, is now the same as it was 10 years ago. But during that time, the cost of food has gone up, the cost of housing has doubled, the cost of rent has doubled, the cost of living has shot up while Canadians' productivity has not. And the Bank of Canada told the Finance Committee earlier this month, the productivity crisis and the cost of living crisis are the same thing, Mr. Speaker. Canadians increasingly can't afford to live because the government keeps growing, choking out consumers, absorbing more taxes, while creating laws that chase investment out of Canada, leaving workers less productive than in the rest of the developed world. The government spent 10 years passing anti-business laws that have left Canadians with fewer and fewer jobs in Canada's most productive industries. One full year ago, Mr. Speaker, before the tariff war, the senior deputy governor of the Bank of Canada called this a break glass emergency. She talked about how excessive regulation drives out investment from Canada's #1 industry, which is the energy industry. Energy is by far Canada's biggest and most valuable export. And this government spent 10 years trying to regulate it into the ground. There is nothing in this bill that will deal with the root cause of Canada's productivity emergency. There's a lot of talk about major projects. But when they talk about major projects, this government acts like it's having an out-of-body experience and has no idea who has been in charge of the government for the last 10 years and who introduced Bill C-69 and Bill C-48 and the carbon tax and the emission cap and a host of other major and minor acts that have chased $606 billion out of Canada to the United States even before Trump was inaugurated. So, Mr. Speaker, for a moment, let's set aside this government's mismanagement of the Canadian economy, the fiscal deterioration of the national balance sheet that it is presiding over, and the cost of living crisis that has been triggered by this government's overspending, and let's talk about fiscal anchors. On a boat, Mr. Speaker, an anchor is something that you use to hold the boat in place. If you cut the line that connects you from the anchor, your boat drifts aimlessly until it runs aground somewhere. If this government was a sailor, Mr. Speaker, it would be the kind of sailor who brings a new anchor on board the boat, a shiny new piece of equipment that it shows off to everybody, and then throws the anchor overboard without attaching it to a line that connects it to the boat. And that's exactly what this government does, and it wonders why they're adrift. Fiscal anchors mean nothing, Mr. Speaker, if they are not attached to anything. This government was literally only a few weeks old in 2015 when it broke its promise of a limited deficit. They pretended that it never made any such promise and replaced it, their 2015 election promise, with this so-called fiscal anchor of the time, which was that Canada's debt to GDP ratio would never go down. They said it hundreds of times in this chamber. At the end of 2019, they cut that anchor and brought in a new one and said that our new anchor is our AAA credit rating. Well, then Fitch Credit Rating Agency downgraded Canada to AA+. And in the COVID recovery, then they came up with a guardrail, which was a maximum deficit. They blew through that and then went back to claiming that a declining debt to GDP ratio was their fiscal anchor. Well, this budget cuts loose all of their past fiscal anchors and brings in two new ones: a balanced operating spending with revenue by 28-29 and maintaining a declining deficit to GDP ratio. So how much credibility does this government deserve when its history of cutting the line on its anchors? Based on history alone, I say none, but the parliamentary budget officer did give them a 7.5% chance of maintaining the anchor on declining deficit to GDP ratio. So that's getting down close to 20-1, Mr. Speaker, if the PBO is getting betting odds on this government keeping this anchor. So these anchors mean nothing when their operating budget relies on accounting trickery as well. So, Mr. Speaker, this budget adds $80 billion to the national debt at a time when interest is choking out all of other expenses. It's unsustainable, unsupportable, and this government is unbelievable.
Questions and comments. Question and commentary. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. What's unbelievable is the attitudes in which the Conservative Party has at not wanting to invest in Canadians and indeed in Canada. Quite frankly, and the member just made reference in his speech to D&D, military spending. Does he not realize that the leader of the Conservative Party today sat around a caucus where it was 1% of the GDP? This budget has 2%. How dare he have any gumption at all to be critical in terms of this Prime Minister? My question to the member opposite is, we have a Prime Minister that is traveling the world in order to solidify markets for Canadians, for businesses. In fact, over at the United Emirates, we're talking about hundreds of millions of potential investments for mega projects. Does the Conservative Party support expanding our economy beyond the USA borders?
You know, member for Calgary Crowfoot.
Of course I support that objective, Mr. Speaker. The problem is this government has no credibility on executing on any of the things that it promises. This government, right now, they've been in charge for 10 years, and we've got no significant...
Mr. Seebeck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for coming all the way here today. Kevin, I know you came all the way from Halifax. I just wanted to start quickly with Tim. Tim, there were, when we talk about work disruptions, there were 845 work disruptions in Canada in 2024. To me, this seems to be an increasing problem. 8 uses of Section 107 in the past 15 months. I don't know if you heard or were watching, but I asked the Secretary of State for Labour if he thought that the use of Section 107 is deteriorating labour relations between the employer and the union. He didn't really answer the question. I'm being kind by saying that. What do you think the effect of this use is on employers and unions?
Thank you for the question. The use of Section 107, there's no doubt about it. It erodes labor relations. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think it's fair to say that, well, I'll back up. I don't think it's fair to say that any labor disruptions are simply the result of unions going on strike. That's a myopic view. It's the result of a breakdown in labor relations. It's a breakdown of collective bargaining. So, and it takes both parties to bargain responsibly in order to achieve a fair and good outcome. So when Section 107 is used, it removes any incentive to bargain in good faith in the period leading up to what could possibly amount to being a dispute.
Because the employer knows Section 107 is coming, so they don't have to really bargain, and then we seem to end up there anyway. So that's why we end up, one of the reasons we end up there is because the employer knows the government's going to intervene with 107 because they used it 8 times in the last 15 months.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear that it's becoming part of the plan, if not the plan, for certain employers. I mean, we know that. We have letters in writing to the minister asking for them to invoke Section 107. We have, certain leaders admitting to that plan, or that being their plan, on national television. So it's part of the plan, and it is really harming the process from which, and if it was a better process, we could end up with a better outcome.
Were you surprised that the Secretary of State for Labor wouldn't even acknowledge that it's damaging labor relations in the country, the use of Section 107? Did you find that surprising?
Well, I mean, I entered the room just as that conversation was ongoing. So, I don't want to comment on the entirety of the Secretary of State's replies, but I will say, and I think this might answer your question, that to me, it's very clear that there is a problem here, and it has to be acknowledged, and and the continued use of it, and to not acknowledge it is going to, or to allow for it to continue to be used, is going to continue to erode labor relations in Canada.
Your proposal seems to be to build a better mousetrap, right? To lack of a better phrase, right? You want to build a better bargaining process or a better mousetrap. That's kind of your suggestion, right?
I think it is incumbent upon all of us. Our union, we have not been on strike in approaching 30 years either in pilots in Canada. We don't want to go on strike. We want to work. Labor disputes are the result of breakdowns, and this just makes breakdowns more likely, not less likely.
Do you get any sense that the government's interested in trying to find a better process, or do you get any indication that they just think the answer is Section 107?
Well, so far the answer has been Section 107, but I am a glass half full type of person. I do hope that everybody here in this room and in the House of Commons and from Canadians from coast to coast do get interested in resolving the problem, because there is one.
Kevin, I'll ask basically the same question. I mean, you did sort of touch on it in your opening statement, but do you believe that the use of Section 107 8 times in the last 14 months is damaging labor relations in the country?
Well, it undermines collective bargaining. And what happens is there's a breakdown in trust between the parties, and the long-term health between the management and the unions fail. So it's all it essentially does is kick the issue down the road to the next time around, when then you already have animosity built up between the two parties. And if I may, the example I'll use is the Port of Montreal. The Port of Montreal has had their last 3 agreements imposed on them through binding arbitration. And as we see, the Port of Montreal is in binding arbitration again because of that.
Because of Section 107?
Yes. So.
And that's part of the problem, because it actually increases, when the parties don't get to resolve the dispute themselves through the collective process, it increases the animosity between the parties. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the issues don't go away. So if the issues were here the last round and an agreement is imposed on you through binding arbitration, the majority of the time those issues don't get addressed. They're brought up the next time around. And if the employers' associations, and in our industry, the terminal operators and the shipping lines don't want to address them again, it becomes an issue for the next round of bargaining, and so on, until, if they were important enough to bring up in 2012, and they're important enough to bring up in 2015 and 2020, then, they're going to be brought up in 2025.
Thanks.
Madame de Rocher.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'd like to thank each of the witnesses for taking the time to be here. I just want to make note that, and it's talked about a lot in the House and also in this committee in particular, we're in a housing crisis in this country where many Canadians can't find a suitable place to live. We also have 2 million Canadians a month that are visiting food banks. And life has just become so unaffordable for so many hardworking Canadians who just want to be able to get ahead in life. So I'm just wondering, I'll start with you, Mr. Perry, quickly, because I don't have a lot of time. To what extent is the affordability crisis driving the recent increase in labor disruptions in Canada?
I think thank you for the question. Complex issue for sure. I think that the strains upon, and I'm going to talk about members and working people, and from that perspective, the strains on them are numerous, and you've identified certainly one area where that's the case.
Some of them. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that so a good way to approach that is to have a healthy collective bargaining system that can make wages and working conditions, move along with the times.
Okay, sorry, Ms. Bray. I don't have a lot of time. How about for yourself, Mr. Piper? I know your union hasn't had a strike in a long time, since before I was born, but in general, would the cost of living crisis seem to put pressure on those folks working?
No, well, it's hard to speak for the industry as a whole.
For sure.
But the problem we see is that the profits that the shipping lines and the terminal operators are making since COVID are record profits, and they don't seem to want to bring us with them. So there's a disconnect between the shipping lines, the terminal operators, and their bottom line, and what they're willing to pay the hardworking men and women of the longshoring industry.
Okay, thank you. And to CFIB, would you agree with that statement that the cost of living crisis is increasing the pressure on working folks?
I'm not sure the living crisis was the reason why the Port of Montreal saw 3 strikes in a few years. I don't think that's the reason why we saw several strikes at BC ports. I don't believe it was this reason that we saw the St. Lawrence Seaway be paralyzed. I believe that there's currently a momentum for union to strike because they believe that they have the upper end and they want to use it to maximize the benefit of their members.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, with my remaining time here, I would like to quickly move a motion that the committee invite the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure and the Minister of Jobs and Families for no less than 1 hour each separately to testify in relation to the supplementary estimates B 2025-2026 before the December adjournment. This is a very standard procedure amongst other committees. I'm sure that we could pass this quite quickly.
In order. Just to give me a moment.
It is on notice.
Yes. I've been advised the motion is on. The motion is in order. Discussion on the motion of Ms. Falk. And I would just ask the witness to bear with us. This is within the member's right to do. Question, Mr. Roche?
No, I'm just a little bit confused by this because both of these ministers have been invited and are scheduled to testify in this committee already. So I don't know if the member is asking to add the issue of the supplementary estimates to their testimony, or they're suggesting that they come back one more time. I'd just like some clarification.
Yeah.
Come back again.
Ms. Falk?
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. This is long-standing practice in each committee to have the ministers come that are responsible for their departments to come to their respective committees and have dedicated time specifically for the supplementary B estimates. So absolutely an additional on top of what they're coming for already, given those are specific studies or specific mandates. So again, this is something that almost every committee does, standard practice even within this committee, as the chair would know.
Any further discussion on the motion put forward by Ms. Falk?
I'm just sorry. I'm helping out today. I just wanted to know, and I understand our member of parliament that is reflecting on this. I'm just curious to know. I was under the impression we were here to study a certain motion, and you're introducing a motion to. Was that discussed among all parties? Did you have an agreement?
It was on notice. This is, again, standard practice, specifically for sure HUMA, as the chair would know, being a long-standing member with me, that this is just what committees do. And we're bound by a timeline in the House as well. We have to report that back before the House rises before Christmas. So again, I thought this would be something easy that we could just pass because it's what this committee's done.
Thank you. And again, the motion is in order. We have Mr. Seaback and then Ms. Fancy, Mr. Roche.
Mr. Chair, I just was going to say we didn't think this would be an issue, and we're now past time, and maybe we should if this isn't going to be passed, or we're going to continue speaking, we should probably let the witnesses go. But
members, Mr. Seaback.
Yep.
You have the floor, or even because I have two others speaking.
We just vote on it, and then Jessica, we just vote on it, and then it continues. The meeting continues.
Sorry. Yes, we have Ms. Fancy on the motion of Ms. Falk.
Yeah, thank you for this motion. As we know, the ministers are already scheduled to be here. The only thing I would have is a sub-amendment to take out before December, as it can impede in our already scheduled calendar of events.
Is that, just clarify, you're amending the motion?
Yes, I'd like to amend the motion and remove the before the December.
Mr. Roche?
I'd like to, support my colleague and just say that we've agreed to a calendar a few weeks ago, and every week we add a new thing that pushes us further away from that calendar. And we've been very flexible in accommodating these, but I just want to say that. And I'd like to add a sub-amendment to strike out the no less than 1 hour each, so for 1 hour each, and remove the separately, just, so that we can have the option of combining if possible.
Just, Madame de Roche, we have to deal with the amendment because you can only sub-amend the amendment that was made in reference to Ms.
No,
Fancy.
I see.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
no.
So can you read?
May I roll that into one then, in striking out no less than, and striking out.
You would need unanimous consent to change your already amendment that's on the floor.
Okay.
So we have, so we're clear, we have an amendment moved by Ms. Fancy. Discussion on the amendment. If there's none, I will, Ms. Falk. Ms. Falk. Ms. Falk.
So I would say pursuant to Standing Order 81.5, so each committee consider and report or shall be deemed to have reported the same no later than 3 sitting days before the final sitting of the supply period, not later than Wednesday, December 10th. So this is a standing order. So I don't know how we would take out when we'd have to report by. This is something the House is saying that we need to do. So Wednesday, December 10th, or 3 sitting days before the last allotted day in the current period. So I don't know how we could be in agreement with that amendment.
I guess my only question to that, through you, Chair, would be, will that push the temporary foreign workers study into the next House sitting?
It very well could if it's adopted.
I will just make note, too, that the committee can meet extra if we need to meet extra in order to meet these dates. So I don't see an issue as long as we have resources that we can have meetings.
You're both correct.
As well, through you, Chair. Can't the ministers just come after December, like in the new, after we get done our regular schedule, have them come in afterwards? So that way we're not, okay.
Sorry, I have Madame Gill on. Madame Gill, question sur l'amendement?
Oui, Monsieur le Président. En fait, je me pose...
Yes, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if the amendment didn't cause problems to the motion itself by deleting the deadline. Is that an issue in terms of the motion, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Rocher, we're still on the amendment of Ms. Fancy.
Monsieur le Président, je...
Mr. Chair.
Réponse à ma question.
Mr. Chair, I didn't get an answer to my question.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Seaback. Witnesses, thank you for coming in and appearing before Yuma on this very important study. So at that week, we'll excuse you.
All right, guys, we're going to check out a couple of other quick videos, then we'll slip over to question period.
Mr. Speaker, the greatest predictor of future behavior is past behavior. The Prime Minister wants us to believe that he has put forward a budget of austerity and a budget of disciplined spending, but he also wants us to believe that he saved 2 economies. But when we look at his actions, they tell us otherwise. But as poor as his actions are, his own words speak even stronger. People will charge me with being elitist or with globalist, which happens to be exactly what we need. That means, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will always put his wealthy friends first. He will always put nations before Canada. His loyalty does not lie with Canada or with Canadians. He has told us in his own words exactly who he is. And when somebody tells you who they are, you should believe them. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Merci beaucoup.
Go Kusi.
We're living in a much more dangerous world, much more complex world. And in that context, we've seen over the last years not only the increased trade tensions, but it was linked to the deterioration of the international security architecture. And now, when you look at what Canada's vision and plan is our vision is to build Canada strong. We believe that there are lots of things we cannot control in the world right now. But there are a lot of things that we can control. And meanwhile, our plan is to protect, create, attract. Protect jobs that are affected by tariffs, create jobs because we will have a new defense industrial strategy, and of course attract talent and attract investments. And we just announced that we would have one of the biggest budget in the world to attract 1,000 new researchers. While other countries are taking a toll against academic freedom and cutting science, we will double down on science and we'll double down on research.
Whoa, that's not good.
This Liberal government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians and drives up the cost of everything, especially food. The St. Thomas Elgin Food Bank is seeing record demand. 4 out of 5 Canadians say food is their top expense pressure, and the Liberals are standing by their industrial carbon tax, which makes it more expensive to grow, ship, and sell food. Not only are they not scrapping it, they're increasing it. Why is the Prime Minister making life more expensive for Canadians when they can't even get by as it is?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's a bit rich coming from Poilievre's biographer, but let's talk.
We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to do that. The honourable member knows. The honourable member's an experienced politician who's been on the Hill for a long time. She may continue, however.
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about two of the main areas of costs for families. Let's talk about taxes and let's talk about housing. This budget cuts taxes for 22 million Canadians, bringing the basic tax rate down from 15 to 14%. This is a major tax cut. It's about $5 billion a year in tax relief for Canadians. 85% goes to the lowest income tax brackets alone. And then on housing, Mr. Speaker, we're making the biggest investment in housing in Canadian history. We are building up the supply of homes, bringing...
The honourable member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the plug for my book. If the member read books instead of talking points, the country would be in a better place. Food prices have risen almost 40% faster in Canada than the United States. Beef up 17%, chicken 6.2%, and now the Liberals are adding a fuel tax that will make gas 17 cents a litre more expensive. Driving in my riding in rural Canada is not a luxury, it is a necessity. A tax on gas is a tax on life. When will the Liberals get real and make life more affordable?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I think it depends on the types of books that a member might want to read. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about books. Mr. Speaker, this week in this House, the Canadian Association, the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations has been on the Hill representing students from across the land. Here is what Abdul Abbasi, the chair of CASA and a student from the University of Alberta, had to say about this budget. Students are pleased to see that the government has met CASA's call for tens of thousands of student jobs in growing economic sectors. This budget is for them. So if the member opposite wants to talk about how education builds...
Okay, we're going to cross over to question period. I think there's some action on the floor. Let's check it out. Cross right over. Here we go.
But she had little interest in big awards.
Thanks for tuning in,
She cared
gang.
about and drove positive change.
Smash
for
the
people,
like.
The kind of positive change she expects us to deliver in this House. That Shua is not with us anymore is another stark reminder that some of the people who care so much for others need care themselves, even when they don't ask for it. She is beloved and remembered by her husband and children, Andrew, Jonah, and Mira Sepielli, and family members and young adults who she touched, because she loved them and Canada so deeply.
The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Liberal government is the most expensive in Canadian history. The Liberals just don't understand that every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians, driving up the cost of everything. Year over year, food costs have increased 3.4% under these Liberals. Canadians are forced to go hungry to keep a roof over their heads. The Liberals had a chance to lower food costs for Canadians by scrapping the industrial carbon tax, but they chose to make food more expensive by increasing it, driving up the cost of fertilizer and farm equipment. It seems like this government does not care. Mr. Speaker, why won't this Liberal government make the common sense changes needed to make food affordable in Canada again? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher Les Patriotes, Verchères. Mr. Speaker, after winning over St. Mary's University in Halifax on November 15th, the University of Montreal Carabins flew to Regina, where they will now face the Saskatchewan Huskies in the Vanier Cup final. On the team, I have a favorite player, number 44. His name is Mathieu Barsalou. He's the son of my mother's cousin, who plays running back. In the semifinals, he managed to score no fewer than 4 touchdowns, which is quite impressive. Tomorrow, we're counting on you, Carabins, to continue Quebec's dominance by bringing the cup home to Quebec for the 4th year in a row. 2022, 2023, 2024, and why not 2025? Go Blues, go Blues.
The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Speaker, it's a good time to be a soccer fan in Ottawa. Ottawa Rapid, the women's soccer team, finished an outstanding first season, finishing second in the league and making it all the way to a heartbreaker of a penalty shootout in the semifinals against Vancouver. The very next day, the Atletico Ottawa, the men's soccer team, finished off their own exceptional season with the now famous final of the Canadian Premier League, played in the middle of a classic Canadian snowstorm, defeating Calgary 2-1. Speaker, if you have not yet Googled Icicle Kick by David Rodriguez, you want to check it out. It is gone viral. Both the teams are making our city proud and also hoping to put Canadian soccer on the map. Let's hear it for Ottawa Rapid and Atletico Ottawa. Go Canada!
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Last week, the PBO released his response to the Prime Minister's costly budget, and it painted a grim fiscal picture. His report states when Budget 2025, the government abandoned their previous fiscal anchor to reduce the federal debt-to-GDP ratio over the medium term. He pointed out that in the 2024 Fall Economic Statement, the government reiterated its commitment to reducing the federal debt-to-GDP ratio over the medium term, noting that this metric is key, not only for fiscal sustainability, but also to preserve Canada's AAA credit rating. It's no wonder the Prime Minister wants to fire him. The PBO keeps telling the truth. But this government will continue to try to discredit those who attempt to tell the truth to Canadians about who they are and the damage that they have done to Canada. My Conservative colleagues and I will never stop fighting for Canada, forcing those who claim to serve her to be loyal and defending the nation that I love.
The honourable member for Pickering, Brooklyn.
Mr. Speaker, November marks Hindu Heritage Month, a time to honour one of the world's oldest living traditions and recognize the profound contributions that Hindu Canadians make to our country in the field of medicine, new technologies, education, arts, finance, and entrepreneurship. With nearly 1 million Hindu Canadians enriching our social, cultural, and economic values, from philanthropists like Ramesh Chotai in Pickering to political leaders like Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Public Safety, and the Liberal Party leader Sachit Mehra, Hindu Canadians continue to shape the present and future of our political landscape. Canada's strength lies in our ability to learn from one another, celebrate our differences, and work together for a common good. I invite my colleagues in the House to participate in the many Hindu Heritage Month events being hosted in your local communities. Happy Hindu Heritage Month, everyone.
The honourable member.
Come on.
For Fundy Royal.
Mr. Speaker, while hardworking Canadians jump through hoops to do things by the book and pay more than their fair share in taxes, Brookfield has been exposed as one of Canada's biggest tax dodgers. It was recently revealed that the Prime Minister's company avoided paying more than $6.5 billion in Canadian taxes over the last 5 years by funneling profits through offshore tax havens in Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. This may come as a shock to Canadians, but it's no surprise to the Prime Minister, who himself had set up 3 multi-billion-dollar investment funds registered offshore while he was chair of Brookfield. Liberals are telling young Canadians to sacrifice more, while the Prime Minister has done everything in his power to sacrifice less. This is the height of hypocrisy. Canadians deserve a Prime Minister who puts the country first, not his own bank account. Conservatives will always defend hard-working Canadians, and we will hold the Prime Minister accountable for forcing taxpayers to sacrifice more than he's willing to sacrifice himself.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa Vanier Gloucester. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following World Menopause Month in October, we must highlight this issue that affects the health, well-being, and financial security of millions of women across the country.
Menopause gained real momentum last month. Menopause is a natural life phase that affects the body, mind, and emotional well-being, yet many women still go through it without realizing their symptoms are linked to it. According to the Menopause Foundation of Canada, unmanaged symptoms carry an estimated annual cost of $3.5 billion to the Canadian economy. With women aged 45 to 55 now the fastest growing segment of the Canadian workforce, supporting them isn't just the right thing to do. It strengthens families, workspaces, communities, and our economy. Continuons
Let's keep the momentum going from October. Let's break the silence so that menopause is no longer minimized or misunderstood, but addressed with the education, support, and respect that women deserve.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Well, Canadians thought Justin Trudeau was the jet-setting Prime Minister, but it turns out the current Prime Minister actually puts him to shame. He professes to put Canada first, but he loves to leave our country any opportunity he gets. In fact, in the last few short months, he has managed to rack up 28 trips, equivalent to 4 trips around the globe. As he enjoys his luxury travel from continent to continent, Canadians are left in the lurch, wondering if he will ever bring home a deal for them. In fact, the tangibles show the exact opposite. His trip to Washington equaled more tariffs. His trip to China equaled more tariffs. His trip to India equaled more tariffs. The more air miles he racks up, the worse things get. And this, of course, is as Canadian families are already struggling just to pay their bills. So, after photo ops and deals for Brookfield, the only souvenir that this Prime Minister brings home for Canadians is the bill, and he expects families to foot it. That's wrong.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, on September 27th, the Ottawa Valley lost a giant in Terry McHale. Devoted to his community, he served as a municipal councillor and spent 40 years with the Douglas Fire Department and rose to become fire chief. An entrepreneur, he and his brother Jim owned and operated Bromley Farm Supply, a cornerstone of the local agricultural community. In addition, together with his love Evelyn, he owned and operated the famous Douglas Tavern for 49 years. Not just a community gathering place where everyone was welcomed, the McHales hosted celebrations of their Irish heritage and culture, of which Terry was fiercely proud. Generosity ran through his veins. He and Evelyn raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to support the community. He was also a driving force of the Lions Club. Terry will be forever missed by countless people, Mr. Speaker, most of all by Evelyn, their children, grandchildren, and his extended family. Rest in peace, Terry, and thank you.
Oral questions.
Here we go.
The honourable member for Dufferin Caledon.
Here we go. Kyle Seaback.
In a mere 8 months, this globe-trotting Prime Minister has actually now circumnavigated the globe 4 times. And it wouldn't be so bad if he actually delivered some results for Canadians. But every time he meets with a world leader, things get worse. When he met with the Premier of China, they slapped canola tariffs on Canadian farmers. When he met with the Prime Minister of India, they slapped fees on peas. He's met with the U.S. President how many times? And tariffs have only gone up. Every time this Prime Minister gets near a plane, Canadian farmers clutch their wallets in a panic. If all his travel results in worse conditions for Canadians, why does he keep doing it?
Honourable Minister for Artificial Intelligence.
Mr. Speaker, it's very worrying that the opposition seems to exhibit such a fear of flying, but it's even more worrying that they exhibit a fear of building. The Prime Minister went to the UAE and brought back $1 billion deal to build our critical mineral sector, a $70 billion of investment to build our country, and that is exactly what we are doing. Turns out, Mr. Speaker, our plan is an excellent cure for the opposition's fear of building.
I'm a member for Dufferin Caledon.
Except he actually got a letter that could deliver $1 billion maybe someday. Meanwhile, the effective tariffs on canola is $4.5 billion a year. The effective tariffs on peas is $1 billion a year. We have a $1 trillion trade arrangement with the United States, and our steel industry, our aluminum industry, and our auto sector and softwood lumber industry are getting absolutely decimated while he flies around and brings back this tiny paltry deal. It's like bragging about the Blue Jays beating a Little League team 15-1. Look, if the result of all his travel is only making things worse for Canadians, why doesn't he just stay home?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade.
Speaker, Canada is a proud trading nation, and the way we've been able to build that proud tradition of trading around the world and build prosperity in this country is by actually going to other parts of the world, building those relationships, and that is precisely what the Prime Minister is doing. In fact, just yesterday, the government of United Arab Emirates have decided to invest $70 billion in Canada. That's investment in our communities, creating good-paying jobs. And that is just the beginning, Speaker. That is the work the Prime Minister is doing, and we will continue to do so.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, remember elbows up? Well, the only thing that's up right now are the Prime Minister's air miles. He's flown enough kilometers to circle the Earth 4 times, but after all that globe-trotting, Canadians still get no deals, no relief, higher tariffs and higher bills. Every time the Prime Minister steps off a private jet, Canadians get hit with another tariff hike. After the U.S., higher tariffs. After China, new tariffs on seafood and grain. Why is it that every time the Prime Minister meets foreign leaders, Canadians get stuck paying for his failures through higher tariffs?
The Honourable Minister for Artificial Intelligence.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have to learn to take yes for an answer. The Prime Minister was in the UAE. They said yes to Canada, investing $1 billion in our critical mineral sector. $70 billion of investment coming to Canada. In fact, the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, supports this. Scott Moe said, "We welcome Prime Minister Carney's efforts to raise Canada's credibility in the international sphere." Time for the opposition to join us and build Canada.
I'll just remind the Honourable Minister not to use the proper name of the Prime Minister in the House. The Honourable Member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, the hollow letter of intent doesn't change the facts. The Prime Minister has flown to meet with the Brits and the UK, a world tour of photo ops, selfies, and Canadians have absolutely nothing to show for it. No wins on tariffs, just more tariffs every single time he travels. He promised his jet-setting diplomacy would help Canadians. All it's done is help his Instagram feed. Will the Prime Minister finally admit that his international photo op tours are not delivering results because the only thing going up when he travels is the cost to Canadians?
That's right. The Honourable Parliament Secretary, Minister of International Trade.
Speaker, just in mere months since this new government has been elected, we have signed a comprehensive agreement, trade agreement with Indonesia. The Prime Minister just was in United Arab Emirates, and he has signed an agreement to protect our investors so that more investments could be made right here in Canada. In fact, we have launched a new trade agreement with the United Arab Emirates as well. But here's the result, Speaker. Just yesterday, they decided to invest $70 billion in our country. Speaker, that's jobs in all our communities. The Conservatives need to get on to accept these wins because that is building Canada strong. Yes.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, with each trip the Prime Minister takes, Canadians hope that there will finally be some wins, some results, lower tariffs, solid deals, gains for our workers. Yet, after each of his trips, be it to the United States, China, or India, the only thing that increases is tariffs and the bills that Canadian families ultimately pay. Why is it that every time the Prime Minister gets on a plane, tariffs go up with him in the air? Has it not occurred to him to come back onto Canadian soil to lower taxes, to lower tax on gas so that Canadians can finally afford to lead good lives? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have lots of good news. The Prime Minister was in the UAE.
Deal. $1 billion in our critical mineral sector. Let's think about that. $70 billion in investment to build Canada, to build our infrastructure, to build good jobs here in Canada. That goes along with our plan to build affordable homes, to invest in our defense sector. I don't know why, Mr. Speaker, the opposition cannot take yes for an answer.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, it just seems that whenever the Prime Minister goes abroad, his former colleagues at Brookfield are never far away. In New York, Brookfield was there. In Singapore, Brookfield was waiting for him. In the UAE this week, well, Brookfield announced a major investment in the same sectors that the Prime Minister says he wants to negotiate. As the coincidences pile up, one thing remains the same. Tariffs in Canada are going up. Will the Prime Minister have the decency to send his travel expense reports to Brookfield directly? Because clearly they're the only ones profiting from his trips.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary and Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's truly amazing. The Conservatives need to refocus their questions. Quite frankly, when it comes to trade and building Canada strong, you have to look at exports that go beyond the United States. Whether it's Indonesia, Korea, the Philippines, the United Emirates, there is a Prime Minister that is working hard for Canadians every day to expand trade opportunities, and that means hundreds of millions of dollars in exports, Mr. Speaker. That is a positive thing. They should be supported. supporting it instead of the ridiculous questions they're asking today.
The Honourable Member for Gaspésie, les Îles de la Madeleine, Listigouche. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister loves to travel, yet he boycotted the Conference of Parties on Climate Change in Brazil. He chose not to attend. Meanwhile, Canada was sanctioned by the whole world for backtracking in the fight against climate change. Canada even earned the Fossil Prize, which usually is earned by petromonarchies. Canada was ranked 61st out of 67 countries for its terrible climate performance, and just when we think Canada has done its worst, it does even worse. Why have the Liberals given up the fight against climate change? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, Canada remains committed to the Paris Agreement and the net zero emissions goal by 2050. Canada has grown and become less carbon intensive thanks to better technology, clean energy, and innovative solution. Our climate strategy is based on all that progress, and we are positioning Canadian businesses so that one day they can play a critical role in the global transition toward net zero. Mr. Speaker, we are making progress. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Gaspésie, les Îles de la Madeleine, Listigouche. Mr. Speaker, no, we are not making progress in the fight on climate change. Canada is one of the worst performers in the world. Meanwhile, in that context, the Liberals are trying to do even worse. Canada was shamed before the entire world at COP30, and at this time, the government decides to negotiate with Alberta to build a new pipeline out west. After the federal government invested so much in the Trans Mountain pipeline, but it wasn't enough for them, now they want more pipelines. When will the Liberals stop capitulating to big oil and their gluttony? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, as we have done this week, Canada continues to play a critical and constructive role. We had a Canadian delegation at COP30. We worked with our international counterparts, with Indigenous communities, with other levels of government, with civil society, and with union groups and other stakeholders. We're all working together to guarantee that we go from commitment to implementation and action. We will implement all of our Paris objectives. We will have a low-carbon economy which is resilient to climate change. The Honourable Member for Beauharnois, Salaberry, Soulanges, Huntington. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers don't want another Liberal dirty oil pipeline out west. In fact, last summer, often on many days, we had some of the worst air quality in the world because of forest fires. Maybe Albertans have forgotten that Jasper burned down, but we have not forgotten. We have producers, agriculture producers, who are losing their entire crops, their harvests every year because of dysregulated climate. We're already experiencing climate change. Will the Liberals put an end to this new pipeline project? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're investing in some major projects, and in Budget 2025 we have included tax credits for clean energy of 15% for companies like Hydro-Quebec. There's also $17.2 billion over several years for infrastructure like healthcare infrastructure, universities, and CEGEPs. We are working to build strong communities by ensuring that we invest $51 billion over 10 years for places like Uber-Reeves, Charlevoix, and also the shipyard.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is spinning that he negotiated a great deal with the UAE. It's such a great deal that the text is nowhere to be found. No details have been provided, and as far as these so-called investment commitments go, there is no timeline. So, a simple question, on what date can we expect to see the first dollar of investment from the UAE? Just a date, please.
The Honourable Secretary of State, Brandon Review Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this may come as a surprise to a party whose leader has never had a job outside of this House, but you actually have to travel the global economy to build relationships to bring investment back to this country. Mr. Speaker, our side is focused on building the strongest economy in the G7. Their side continues with this bizarre line of questioning about the Prime Minister's travel. Our Prime Minister is focused on building our country, retooling our economy, and making our economy the pride of the G7. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Asked for a date. There is no date, but rest assured, the government has secured meetings with the UAE next year. So what we have is an agreement to talk about a possible agreement sometime in the future. More jet setting, more photo ops, more press releases with no tangible results for Canadian workers. Is this the best we can get from the so-called master negotiator?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for International Trade.
Well, Speaker, I think it's a great day when you hear a foreign government deciding to invest $70 billion in our economy. That is, we're talking about AI, infrastructure, and agriculture to create those jobs. This is about making sure that we can leverage their sovereign fund and our pension funds to create opportunities for our economy right here at home. Like companies like Mila, which is launching a new partnership with the UAE's Technology Innovation Institute, or BlackBerry, Speaker, who signed a partnership with UAE's Cybersecurity Council to strengthen cybersecurity cooperation infrastructure, or Invest in Canada, which is working with the UAE to partner to identify, explore large-scale investments right.
The Honourable Member for York Durham.
Mr. Speaker, when Canadians travel, whether it's a holiday with family or a business trip with colleagues, they come back with good memories and maybe a souvenir or two. When the Prime Minister travels, he comes back with something very different, a hangover of tariffs. When he met with the Chinese, more tariffs. When he met with the Indians, more tariffs. And when he met with the Americans, again and again and again, more tariffs on steel, autos, aluminum, forestry, and more. Mr. Speaker, how many more trips does the Prime Minister need before he will acknowledge the simple truth that every farmer, factory worker, and steel worker in the country knows? His policy is failing them.
The Honourable Minister for Artificial Intelligence.
Mr. Speaker, thanks for the question. You got to wonder what the opposition will really support. They can't support a deal to invest $1 billion in critical minerals from the UAE. They can't support $70 billion coming in from the UAE. Maybe it's just because they want us to be distracted from what they also opposed. On Monday, they opposed LNG, Canada Phase 2 in British Columbia, the Darlington new nuclear project in Bowmanville, 18,000 construction jobs, the Red Chris mine expansion in northwest British Columbia. Mr. Speaker, the real question is, what do the opposition support?
The Honourable Member for York Durham.
Mr. Speaker, an agreement for the future is no solution to today's problems. An agreement with the UAE is no agreement when there's no investment. Canadians, we know that Canadians have moved $124 billion out of Canada. If Canadians have no faith in this government, why would any foreign investor? But more troubling, the real and present danger is the inability to get a deal on the things that count. On steel, on aluminum, on canola. Canada's chief trade negotiator said today there is no negotiations ongoing with the U.S. When will we start negotiations and get a deal?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives voted against the budget. And I just want you to know what you voted against. You know what you voted against? You're cheering for voting against the largest pay increase for the military, a defense spending plan. You voted against the nuclear plant in your riding. Mr. Speaker, a tax cut for 22 million Canadians, a national school food program, which the Conservatives called garbage, Mr. Speaker, 1,000 RCMP personnel, 1,000 border officers. That's what you voted against, Mr. Speaker. So when the Conservatives vote against the budget, they vote against Canadian.
Order. And I'll just remind the Secretary of State to please address his comments through the chair. The Honourable Member for Okanagan, Lake West, South Kelowna.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer says the Prime Minister abandoned his own fiscal anchor, the one he claimed was key to preserving Canada's AAA credit rating and keeping borrowing costs low. Fitch warns federal finances run, and I quote, a high risk of further deterioration. Is the Prime Minister breaking his own fiscal promises because he's incompetent or because he just doesn't care about Canadians' future?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about how Canada is one of only a handful of countries around the world that maintains a AAA credit rating. That stamp of approval means that we have not just a strong but an enviable fiscal position. The head of the IMF has said that Canada is acting decisively to use its fiscal space to make the investments that are going to boost our productivity and growth. We are on the right track. Mr. Speaker, you know when Canada lost its AAA credit rating? In the early 1990s, after the party opposite was in power with reckless deficits and ballooning debt.
For Okanagan, Lake West, South Kelowna.
I'm from BC. David Eby is taking us off a fiscal cliff simply because they said the exact same things and got downgraded. Now, Canadians are paying nearly 50% more on their credit cards since 2015, while this Prime Minister maxes out the taxpayer's credit card. The Parliamentary Budget Office says the government broke its own debt-to-GDP promise, and Fitch is warning of fiscal slippage. Is this costly credit card budget proof of reckless spending or proof of total economic mismanagement, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Secretary of State for CRA.
Mr. Speaker, like that member, he should actually read the report before citing it and get up in the House to talk about it. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, and I quote, current fiscal policy in Budget 2025 would be deemed sustainable over the long term. That's directly from the PBO report. Mr. Speaker, we have the best credit rating in the world. We have the best net debt to GDP in the G7. We're going to use that fiscal firepower to build the strongest economy in the G7. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's costly credit card budget piles today's reckless spending onto tomorrow's taxpayers. After 10 years of Liberal budgets failing to balance themselves, Canadians now put nearly 50% more of their expenses on credit cards. Fitch warns federal finances are at a high risk of further deterioration because this government keeps blowing past their own fiscal anchors. And the fiscal watchdog says there is less than 10% chance they will keep to their spending promises. No wonder this Prime Minister wants to fire him. So how many more fiscal watchdog reports will it take for this Prime Minister to finally rein in on his credit card spending?
Yeah. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, at every opportunity the opposition had to make life more affordable for Canadians, they failed. They voted against more affordable early learning and childcare, against lower taxes, eliminating the tax on new home purchases, Mr. Speaker. They failed Canadians at every opportunity. The common sense Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, where are they? One member is here, two members behind the curtains.
The Honourable Member for Côte-Nord, Kawawachi-Kamash, Nisasinan. Mr. Speaker, the news struck us like an axe. The Arbeck plant in Port-Cartier is laying off about 100 workers. The federal government needs to wake up. The forestry industry, including Arbeck, was in Ottawa less than a month ago to raise awareness about its problems and to talk about solutions. They need a wage subsidy, specifically to avoid layoffs like those in Port-Cartier. And for the forestry sector in general, the federal government needs to advance 50% of the countervailing and anti-dumping duties to be paid. How many more layoffs will it take for Ottawa to wake up and do something? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, softwood lumber and the entire forestry sector in Canada are critical to Canada's economy. We have clearly stated that these tariffs on softwood lumber are unjustified and unacceptable, and we are doing everything we can to get the tariffs cancelled. We have announced a $50 million program to help with jobs. There's our $500 million as well in liquidity, and there will be more announcements and measures in the future to support all workers in our forestry industry. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Côte-Nord, Kawawachi-Kamash, Nitasinan. Mr. Speaker, we need to take action before businesses shut down. Things are terrible in the industry, but I don't know whether the government understands that. There were 100 layoffs at Arbeck in Port-Cartier yesterday. Last week, workers in Amos, just before Christmas, found out that they were being laid off. Last June, there were layoffs in Lac-Saint-Jean, in Mauricie, and elsewhere, too. And after all these layoffs, the Liberals still refuse to provide the solutions that the industry is calling for. They need wage subsidies, and they need money to compensate for the Americans' illegal duties. Why are the Liberals still waiting to take action? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't really understand my colleague's question. We already have 3 programs in place to help. And as I just said, there will be new programs too. There's a program to support businesses that pay salaries. There is a program for transformation as well. And there will be more programs upcoming. The Honourable Member Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is treating the country's finances as if he were using his own personal credit card, and the result of that is that Canadians are getting deeper into debt and they are paying more and more for it. Worse still, the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirms that the Prime Minister has reneged on reducing the debt-to-GDP ratio. And that was a crucial commitment to make sure that Canada doesn't end up paying too high borrowing costs. Mr. Speaker, how many more warnings will it take before this Prime Minister finally stops spending money as if money grew on trees?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives voted against Budget 2025. They voted against skilled trade person. You know, Budget 2025 supports our skilled trades folks with major investments in local infrastructure, clean economy projects, expanded training for every workers across the country. But don't just take my word for it, Mr. Speaker. Take the word of the building trades unions. They said they're thrilled by this budget that it passed, calling it a monumental for skilled workers. Wow. The $50 billion infrastructure, $75 million in training, but they had another thing to say. What they said was that they also said that those who supported the budget acted in...
The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup, Kataskalmak-Témiscouata. Mr. Speaker, I hear my Liberal colleague trying to defend the indefensible, but the facts are clear. Fitch, the agency that rates our creditworthiness, has clearly warned that Canada's finances are at high risk of deterioration due to this government's out-of-control spending. So, rather than spouting more platitudes, can my colleague explain why his government is totally ignoring expert warnings and why the government is stubbornly driving the country's economy straight into a wall?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 has two fiscal anchors, the debt-to-GDP ratio and balancing the operational expenditures budget within 3 years. Our PBO, Kevin Page, recently said that the current economic situation, he said that he felt okay with the current situation. Canada is ahead of Italy, the United Kingdom, and France. And this is thanks to major investments in Budget 2025.
Mr. Speaker, remember when this Liberal government told us that the budget would balance itself? For 10 years, it has promised to spend less while throwing money in every direction. Having finally blown up the economy, their brilliant solution is to spend twice as much, but change the name of spending to investment. Even the PBO, the budget watchdog, and Fitch Ratings are pulling their hair out. How many more fiscal watchdogs report is it going to take for this Prime Minister to rein in his costly credit card spending?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, this week we passed an historic budget, a budget to build Canada, a budget to build our economy, the strongest in the G7. Mr. Speaker, everyone in this House knows that trade relationships across the world have changed. Our relationship with the U.S. has been fractured. Our Prime Minister is doing the right thing by traveling around the world to build up trade relationships. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are serious about building the strongest economy in the G7. The party opposite continues with this crazy line of questions. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, in the Transport Committee, we learned that the Liberal Party is encouraging the Driver Inc. scheme. Canada Post, yes, you heard me correctly, Canada Post has signed contracts with drivers who have not even been trained. That is shameful, Mr. Speaker. How can this government close its eyes to practices that endanger road safety and the lives of Canadian families? Mr. Speaker, it's time to put a stop to this. Will the Minister of Transport step in? Yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To respond to my colleague, you know that this government supports safety in all modes of transportation. We have heavily invested in all of our transport infrastructure. We are there to make infrastructure safer and make transport safer. One thing is clear. Transportation here is safe. We have some of the safest transportation in the entire world. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the only security the Liberals care about is Brookfield's financial security. The Liberal Party will not convene the Transport Committee. They've been holding up all work for 4 weeks because they do not want to hear testimony from accident victims. That is atrocious. It's embarrassing. It shows a complete lack of respect to families who are awaiting answers. Mr. Speaker, will the committee chair, the member for Vaudreuil, stand up and reconvene the Transport Committee, yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, every accident on our roads is a terrible shock for families, and we stand with the victims of these families. That is why we are working with different government agencies, different authorities, and the provinces to ensure that these tragedies do not repeat themselves. We will make our transportation rules stronger, we will make our system safer, and we will work with all stakeholders to make this happen.
Labrador. Mr. Speaker, under Stephen Harper's decade of darkness, funding for Canada's military dipped below 1% of GDP for the first and only time ever. This had a very negative impact on military bases like Five Wing Goose Bay in my own riding. Our new government, on the other hand, is committed to rebuilding, rearming, and reinvesting in our Canadian Armed Forces. Unlike the members opposite, I proudly voted for our budget, a budget that delivered generational investment in our capacity to strengthen and protect sovereignty. To those that voted against these investments in our defense...
Order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the President of the Director. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we live in an increasingly divided and dangerous world. We need to defend our people, we need to defend our values, our borders, and our sovereignty. Mr. Speaker, we need to be a strong and reliable partner for our allies. This is the largest investment in national defence in decades, and while the Conservatives voted against the pay raise for our Canadian Armed Forces and an increase in national defence spending, we support our Canadian Armed Forces and will build them strong. We will build Canada strong because we believe in Canada.
Exactly. Member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, potash is a critical mineral and a pillar of Canada's trade strategy. Yet this week, Nutrien, a Canadian champion in potash, has chosen to put $1 billion into a U.S. port project instead of building here at home. Why? Because the aimless regulatory environment created by this Liberal government is too complex and unpredictable. This isn't just about potash, it's about Canada's ability to compete and lead in critical minerals and global trade. Why is this government letting Canada become the last choice for Canadian companies?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker.
Story has already been corrected, and this is a commercial company-led decision, and it's not final. Nutrien has said a final investment decision comes in 2027, with any new terminal only online near the end of the decade. We will keep engaging with them and with others so that Canadian options are as competitive as possible. Canada has the potash that the world needs, and potash is on Canada's critical mineral list because of its importance to food security and global supply chain.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Well, let me provide that member with a quote. This is a failure on Canada's part, a condemnation of our regulatory environment and our ability to permit infrastructure the private sector actually wants to pay for. This is the government actually throwing money out the door while Canadian companies are walking out the back door. Will this member please acknowledge it's their Liberal policies that are pushing investment out and reverse this regulatory mess?
That's right. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we're already investing heavily to strengthen trade corridors and port rail capacity across the country. We've all seen all the major announcements in the last few days and in Budget 2025. And it's include major long-term projects to the National Trade Corridor Fund. These investments are aimed exactly at improving reliability, reducing bottleneck, and keeping value chain here in Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
This Liberal government is the most expensive in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of hard-working Canadians, driving up the cost of everything. Liberals had a chance to lower food costs for Canadians by scrapping the industrial carbon tax. They chose not to listen to Canadians. They chose to make food more expensive by increasing it. They mislead and insult Canadians by calling this tax imaginary. Why is the Prime Minister increasing the industrial carbon tax and making making food more expensive.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker,
deserve an affordable life and opportunities. And Costco CEO was at Agriculture Committee yesterday with other grocers. And on the cost of food and the price that influence, the factor that influence the cost of food, guess what they say? They all agree, Mr. Speaker, that the main factor was weather conditions such as drought that we have experienced recently. Also commodity condition and currency. So, Mr. Speaker, to be a responsible government.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton East Stony Creek.
I don't think I can use drought to explain to the Stony Creek Food Bank that which they told me yesterday in the last 2 months, 40% of the people who have needed help were children. Wow. Food prices have risen nearly 40% faster in Canada than the U.S. Liberals had a chance to lower food costs for Canadians by scrapping the fuel tax, but they chose to keep it. It will cost Canadian families up to 17 more cents per litre when they fill their gas tanks. So I ask again, why is the Prime Minister keeping the fuel tax and making food more expensive?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, let me add to what my colleague has just said to the House. The Canadian Climate Institute yesterday said that, and I quote, industrial carbon pricing has essentially no impact on the price of food and the agricultural sector. Farmers do not pay the industrial price. Mr. Speaker, the air is a little thin on that side of the House today, and I'd like to remind them that they voted against making a national school food permanent. They voted against the Canada Child Benefit, which went to families yesterday, and they voted against a tax cut for 22 million Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Sarnia, Lambton, Bukeshwanong.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that that's not true. The fact is the current Liberal government is the most expensive government in Canadian history. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends drives the cost of everything up, especially food. Now, the Liberals had the opportunity to scrap the industrial carbon tax to reduce the price of food, but instead they're increasing it, driving up the cost of fertilizer, farm equipment, and food. So why is the Prime Minister increasing the industrial carbon tax and making food more expensive?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, obviously, when the other side of the House doesn't want to listen to the facts and to the actual stakeholders that work in these areas, then let's come back to their record. Let's talk about the measures that this House has put in place to make life more affordable for Canadians. That side of the House, childcare doesn't create spaces. Dental care is a duplication, they say. They say pharmacare is radical. They say school food programs are garbage. They say the Canada Child Benefit is redistribution. Mr. Speaker, these are the very programs that help Canadian families have a more affordable life. They vote against it. This House stands for it.
The Honourable Member for Carney Royal.
Mr. Speaker, the lumber industry is part of the backbone of my province in New Brunswick, and 80% of our lumber exports go to the United States. But a pulp and paper mill in Maine is no longer accepting softwood lumber from New Brunswick due to tariffs. When this Prime Minister took office, softwood tariffs were at 14%. They then rose to 35%. Now they're at 45%. The Prime Minister promised he would negotiate a win with the United States by this past July. He has broken that promise. When will the Prime Minister stop selling out our lumber workers?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the forest industry is such a lifeblood and so important for many of our communities, particularly in rural area. That's why we've already announced a series of measures, $700 million for liquidity, $500 million for transformation, $50 million for helping on salary, and we're listening to everyone in the industry, and I would love to work with my colleague because we plan on announcing more measures to help the industry. Thank you.
Order. The Honourable Member for Dundee Royal.
Speaker, these workers aren't asking for new programs. They want to have their jobs back. These forestry workers are being left out in the cold by this Prime Minister. He's touring the world while tariffs on softwood lumber have tripled under his watch. The Liberal government isn't helping workers. The only thing they're helping is themselves, while Canadians lose jobs and families struggle to make ends meet, pay their bills, or put gas in their cars. When will this Prime Minister show some respect to hardworking Canadians and stop selling out our softwood lumber workers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we have been very clear how important the softwood lumber industry is for this country and the government. And we will continue to support them while we navigate. The member may not remember that it's been more than 40 years of discussions, tariff, and all kinds of activities with the American side of the House. So he knows this is a long-term dispute, but we will support our workers and our industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
British Columbia used to be the largest producer of softwood in our nation. Since 2015, over 30 mills have closed in British Columbia, 14 in Caribou, Prince George alone. It's been 10 years without a softwood lumber agreement. And these guys, these Liberals, have done nothing but make it worse. Tens of thousands of jobs have been lost. Just last week in Caribou, Prince George, another mill closure. 165 jobs lost in Hunter Mill House. Wow. 165 gone because of their Liberal incompetence. When will the Prime Minister finally do his job and realize that forestry matters?
The Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, there are some people in this House have historical amnesia. It's been 40 years since we've had problems with the American market for trades on forests. I feel terribly sorry. We feel sorry for the families that are affected by this. We will continue to do everything we can to support them, and we're actively working and hoping for a deal in the future with the Americans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Caribou, Prince George.
In 2006, our former Conservative government put to bed the longest trade war with the U.S. government. We negotiated a one-year grace period, which these guys wasted. We're tired of waiting 10 years, tens of thousands of jobs lost. Our forestry workers, they don't need more programs, more handouts. They don't need charity. They need their jobs. When will they wake up and realize that forestry matters?
That's right. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister responsible for Canada, U.S. Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like the member to know that our government knows that forestry matters. These tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber are unjustified. We're working at every level to fix this dispute. In the meantime, our government's going to continue supporting workers. We're going to prioritize Canadian materials in construction, and we're going to change federal procurement process to procure Canadian lumber. We'll continue to support Canadian workers and industries with Canadian products. Let's work together.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, last week, the Government of Canada announced a second tranche of major projects to build Canada strong. A number of critical minerals projects were referred to the Major Projects Office to speed up their development. Critical minerals are essential for Canada's economic development and national security. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources tell us more about one of these projects in particular, the Nouveau Monde Graphite Project in Quebec? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague from Beauport-Limoilou for that question. I actually took part in this announcement, and I have met with people from Nouveau Monde Graphite at various points in the past. It will bring lots of economic benefits to Quebec, especially to the Quebec battery sector. The mine will be integrated in with a planned battery materials manufacturing plant in Bécancourt. This will make the Canadian economy more resilient and speed up our green shift. It will create more than 1,000 jobs and bring over $1.8 billion of investment to Quebec. Our government is building a strong and prosperous economy.
Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, a new 1 million barrel a day pipeline will mean $5 billion in additional royalties every year. Canada exports over $100 billion a year in oil every year. It is our largest export. It provides jobs, taxes, and prosperity for all Canadians. But under these Liberals, we will never be able to build a new pipeline to the West Coast because of their shipping ban. While huge American tankers sit off our western shores, Western Canadian oil is landlocked. And worse, we we have to sell it to the Americans at a discount. Why are the Liberals giving the Americans a Black Friday deal every day on Canadian energy?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Energy, Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we have an incredible opportunity.
Leading energy superpower in both clean and conventional energy. This government was elected to deliver bold nation-building projects that strengthen our economy, reinforce Canadian autonomy, and advance Indigenous prosperity while contributing to clean growth and Canada's climate objective. Yes, friends from the Conservative Party, we can do both. We're willing to work with all provinces and Indigenous community and Alberta to achieve these shared objectives. Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Member for Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, talk is cheap every day that these Liberals keep their shipping ban in place. The best way to protect and grow Canada's economy is to lift the Liberal shipping ban and start exporting our oil to markets other than the United States. The Liberal shipping ban prevents Canada from building a major new oil pipeline to the West Coast to reach energy-starved Asian markets. The shipping ban costs us tens of thousands of jobs and billions in additional revenue every year. Under these Liberals, every day is Black Friday for Americans buying our cheap energy. Why are the Liberals handing the Americans yet another win by blocking our biggest export?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is talking about infrastructure, but they voted against the largest infrastructure investment in Canadian history. Mr. Speaker, that is what our plan is delivering. We're going to be building roads, bridges, hospitals, major infrastructure in the nation's interest. Mr. Speaker, wages are up 3.5% in October alone. Wow. Canadians created 67,000 jobs. So when the Conservatives voted against the budget, Mr. Speaker, they voted against workers, they voted against jobs, they voted against Canadians.
The honourable member from Regina, Wascana.
Mr. Speaker, the Northern Gateway Pipeline was going to diversify Canada's export markets by selling Canadian oil and gas to the world. But the Liberals killed that project with Bill C-48, the West Coast tanker ban, which keeps Canadian oil and gas landlocked. Worse still, the Liberals' tanker ban applies to Canadian ships only, not American ones. Mr. Speaker, if American ships can export American oil through Canadian waters, then why can't Canadian ships do the same with Canadian oil?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's amazing to hear the Conservatives talk about pipelines. You know, the reality is, for 10 long years, Mr. Speaker, you know how much pipeline they actually built to the tide, to the ocean? Zero. Wow. Not 1 inch of pipeline. Talk is cheap, Mr. Speaker, but we have a Prime Minister and a Liberal government that is pushing growth for our clean energy and energy in general. I think it's time that they come on board and support a government that knows how to get a job done and build Canada stronger.
The Honourable Member for Oakville West.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives promise cuts, our government is making the investments needed to keep Canada's health system strong, including in communities like mine in Oakville West, where building up our health infrastructure is essential to meet the needs of our growing and aging population. Can the Parliamentary Secretary tell the House what the government is doing to make sure Canadians can access to the health care they deserve?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, building a strong Canada means making generational investment infrastructure. Budget 2025 delivers $5 billion in the new health infrastructure fund, strengthening hospitals, ERs, and medical schools across the country. Conservatives voted against investment like this in the House, yet their MPs never missed the ribbon cutting. But we're glad they can come around. Better late than never, though better never late, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we're focused on delivering real results and building a stronger, healthier Canada for everyone.
The Honourable Member for Lanark-Frontenac.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This House unanimously adopted 2 motions, one affirming that a genocide is underway in China, and the other calling on the government to, quote, expedite the entry into Canada of 10,000 Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims in need of protection over 2 years, starting in 2024, end quote. That 2-year period ends in a month. And as of yesterday, only 143 Uyghurs have been admitted to Canada by a government that now calls the People's Republic of China a strategic partner. So, how soon can we expect the remaining 9,857 Uyghurs to receive the protection that we all agree they need?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Immigration, Refugees.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has been an example for the world
particularly when it comes to responding to the Uyghur issue in China, among other global crises affecting fundamentally human rights. We continue to look at this issue. We continue to put in place measures, but the honourable member knows that the circumstances are very challenging indeed. When individuals come to Canada, of course, a number of checks have to be completed, and there's a number of other challenges as well at play. I thank the honourable member for the question and invite him to have a conversation afterwards if he wishes.
The honourable member for Vancouver East.
Based on news reports, the Prime Minister appears ready to sign an MOU with Alberta that could greenlight a brand new pipeline to BC's North Coast behind closed doors without BC at the table, and by carving out an exemption to the tanker ban that protects our communities and our coast. So I ask the Prime Minister, will he commit today that he will not proceed with the project without the full consent of First Nations and the province of BC? And will he honour the tanker ban and put a stop to this pipeline scheme?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we're having very productive conversation with Premier AB about the responsibly advancing major project. By the way, BC is already seeing the highest number of projects move forward of any province. Any additional energy infrastructure in BC that is approved will be considered with direct input from both the provincial government and the Indigenous community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday in question period and again today, we hear allegations that are patently false that U.S. tankers are moving through the Hecate Strait, the area banned for the last 50 years under a moratorium honoured by BC and federal governments of all stripes for 50 years. Any suggestion, as the member for Regina Capel said yesterday, that U.S. tankers are moving through, quote, the exact same place is patently false. Can anyone from the Liberal government benches explain if the Liberals understand the tanker ban?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my friend from Saanich Gulf Islands, who's right across from my community. I'm a proud member of the Musqueam First Nation, which is at the mouth of the Fraser River, right as it flows into the Salish Sea. So I do recognize and understand the vast biodiversity, the vast amount of beautiful wilderness right up and down the coast, including the Hecate Strait between Haida Gwaii and Prince Rupert. And as a proud member of Musqueam, I'm proud to stand on this side of the House, committed to making Canada an energy superpower while protecting the environment, fighting climate change, and seeking consensus with First Nations and other partners.
Hear, hear.
Order. That concludes question period for today. I wish to inform the House that the volume of earpieces will now be...
All right, gang, we're going to wrap up right there. Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney, thank you all so much for watching. We're on a pretty good roll here. I love this chat room. I've got to say, like, these live shows, like the pre-show especially, they're not easy to prepare, but it's growing. It's happening. Like, it's always going to be an interesting pre-show. We can assure you that. Thank my moderators, Captain Kirk and Lady Rhonda. Appreciate all your help and support. And there are so many people, like, I can't go through the list, that I appreciate coming to the chat room, being funny in a time that it's not really very funny. Like, it's a heartbreaker out there. These liberals are just ripping us off. And Liberal voters obviously don't watch frontline politics like House of Commons activities and the Parliament committees. Because if they did, like, they'd catch on pretty quickly to the fact that they're being lied to by the legacy media, by their Liberal Party, whatever. What are you going to do? Happy Friday, gang. Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney, thank you all so much for tuning in. We're back on Monday. Somebody just mentioned that next week is the last week before they have time off for Christmas. Maybe that's fact. I'm going to have to take a peek. But that's it. We're back on Monday, gang. There's other videos coming out this afternoon. We might drop a live show or two because there are a lot of committee meetings that I'd like to show. It's just a matter of time. Anyhow, thank you all so much for watching. Aaron, Smash the like, hit subscribe. I forget to hit the subscribe, forget to hit the like all the time, like when I'm watching other people's videos, even my own. It's a reminder, please hit the like. It does help a guy like me. It helps our little team. That's it. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a great weekend, kids. We've got some good videos coming out this afternoon, this evening. So check out one of those. We'll wrap it up right there. Aaron, Canadian Looney. Thank you all so much for tuning in here. It is a fun chat room. Like, you guys crack me up. We're out. We'll catch you in the next one. Oh, we got to go out on this. Yeah, we got to go out on this.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper, bumper, stomper, boo, tell me, do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room. Bing bong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.